All right, so welcome even to this afternoon's brush pen o'clock session. It will be a meaningful session, I promise you. So even in our conversations earlier on, I heard, some of you mention about how you feel guilty, when you bought the workshop previously and didn't get to write because you were either, there were so many other things that were on our minds, there were so many other things that we were busy with, and just life gets in the way. And I really just wanted to pick up this point and also share a little bit about how I'm a life coach as well, right? So I'm a life coach as well as someone actually mentioned in our session this morning here. So in our life coaching, the women that I do life coaching with, many of them are actually women who are in their life's transitions, whether they are at their crossroads of transiting from a full-time working mom to wanting to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, or in between, like, hybrid moms, or ladies who are considering early retirement, ladies who are suddenly found themselves to be empty nesters. So I have a lot of conversations and life coaching conversations with women who are in these transitions. And some of them also wanted to learn calligraphy. And there was one thing that I always shared with some of our women is that in life, there are two types of rest, okay? One of it we call the draining distractions. One of it we call the productive rest. So myself included, I'm guilty of spending a lot of time on draining distractions. And when I use the word draining distractions, I'm sure you would already have some things that you have in your mind. What are some of the draining distractions? Whether it's doom scrolling on IG, whether it's watching Netflix, or sometimes really just sitting on the couch and doing nothing can be very draining when done over time. And what we thought is rest, like not physically doing anything, was rest, but it was draining rather than rest. On the flip side, productive rest could look like taking a walk outside, could look like cooking up something for our family. It's not productive rest for some, but it is productive rest for some. Doing calligraphy is a form of productive rest that, even though it requires effort, at the end of doing calligraphy, at the end of taking a walk outside, you find yourself more refreshed. You find yourself learning something that fills your heart. You find yourself just so energized and so full and so rested. And so I really wanted to share that because some of us, mentioned, I feel so guilty, for not doing the calligraphy, but I don't want you to feel guilty. Right? Some days life just gets in the way. But calligraphy is not meant to be a to-do checklist that is off your to-do list. Rather, writing calligraphy and also reading the Bible and also praising God and having a walk in the park is not a to-do list, but rather it's an invitation. It's an invitation into productive rest, because when we engage in any of this, it fills you more. It fills you more than not doing it. So really, writing calligraphy is an invitation. So when we give ourselves the time and space to slow down, to pause, to write mindfully, we feel this little bucket in our hearts, right? So yes, I'll start really by giving us a not just quick overview, but really going through the materials that we need in learning brush pen calligraphy. And it's really just simply one tool, okay? I always say, right, that when I teach calligraphy, I want it to be accessible. I want it to be fun and easy for you. So we really start with this one tool. It is called a Pentel brush sign pen. So if you manage to get your hands on a Pentel brush sign pen, that is more than sufficient for you to learn brush pen calligraphy and for you to be in this space to learn a skill that really is a gift that keeps on giving. That when we learn to be able to write beautifully, write calligraphy, we are allowing ourselves to pick up this skill that encourages ourselves with the written word, and also more than that, it is to encourage others with the words that we have beautifully written. All right, so with your Pentel brush and pen, I'll have you to turn to the first few pages of these notes that you have printed out for yourself. Okay, so you will know that even in this chapter 1 of materials you will need, the most important is this Pentel brush and pen. Now, some of you who have actually gone through a little bit or experimented with various types of brush pens would have actually experimented with Tombow brush. You may have experimented with water brush. Well, a lot of these tools uses the same concept of the Pentel brush and pen. So I always say it is great to start with the Pentel brush and pen as a milestone and learn it well and right before we actually engage ourselves with learning the other tools, because you will be able to apply the same techniques and skills to writing any of that using that pen. Right? So that is for sure. You can trust me in that, okay? When you learn this first and then go on to learn any other tools with water brush, with Tombow brush pen, with pointed nib, as I will teach every of these in the calligraphy growth circles, you will find it so much easier and you will love the kind of a different tools that you use to write slightly differently. Okay, so this is the materials that you will need, and it's also here. All right, basic techniques. Now, I'll talk about how we hold our papers and how we tilt our pen and hold our, the other way around, how we hold our brush pen and tilt our papers for left and right-handers, okay? So for right-handers, what we actually do is we tilt our papers, the bottom to the right, okay? So for right-handers, we tilt our papers to the right. So the bottom tilt to the right, all right? For left-handers, we tilt our papers to the left. As simple as that, all right? Now, you might be asking, Serene, how much right to tilt, how much left to tilt? Now, the answer is, as long as you feel comfortable in that the pen is angled in such a way, you hold the pen, there is a little space between your hand and the paper, that's correct, okay? We don't want a position where our hand is like that. Okay, where the hand is so close to the body, you will feel the strain in your shoulder. You don't want this position. We want to tilt the paper in such a way that when you write, there is a space between your arm and your body. All right. So same for left-handers. We tilt our paper, the bottom to the left, so that when we hold our pen, there is a space between the left hand and your left body. So it is not like that. If you strain like that, right, when you write, by the time you write the first, or rather the 5th page, you will feel this strain on your shoulder. And calligraphy is not meant to strain yourself, okay? It is meant for you to feel relaxed. It is meant for you to really just give yourself that time and space. You are supposed to have this very relaxed body position, all right? Okay, so that's how you tilt our papers. Now, how we hold our pen, this is important, right? So, if you have a Pentel brush and pen, you're going to be holding your pen at this rough ridge here. There is this line that you feel that is protruding. That is the line that you hold your pen at. So your 3 fingers, the thumb, the middle finger, and the pointer finger needs to be wrapping around that line of that Pentel brush and pen. Okay. Now, why do we hold at this angle? The reason is because we hold it here so that when the pen is touching the paper, it will be about 45 degrees to the paper. That makes sense, right? It's about 45 degrees to the paper, right? Now, for left-handers, you are holding the pen the same way. Okay, we tilt our papers to the left for left-handers. We hold our thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger around that ridges. And when we hold it like that, when it is against the paper, it will be about 45 degrees against the paper. This is how we hold our brush pen, right? Now, when we are going to be learning different tools subsequently in the calligraphy growth circles, I will teach you how to hold the other tools differently, right? Different tools require different holding positions because the flexibility of the nibs are different. Okay, so for Pentel brush and pen, it is holding it at that line, and that will allow us to be able to write well. Right? Okay. So with your Pentel brush sign pen, you will be able to notice that the nib of this pen is very flexible in that when I pressure down on the nib, it allows us to obtain thick lines. When I gently only use the tip of the nib, it allows us to be able to obtain thin lines. So if you do use eyeliners, anybody use eyeliners before? Yes, right? Yes. Okay, great. All of us use eyeliners before. I use eyeliner as well, but I'm terrible at eyeliners. Why? Because our eyes, right, are not flat. That's one. Okay. Number two, our eyes are of different shapes. Oh my God, that's even worse. Okay, I'm not sure about you. Maybe you have very symmetrical eyes, but my eyes are not symmetrical. So I'm a right-hander. So holding the eyeliner using my right hand to draw, and then doing it like that, that doesn't give me straight lines. It doesn't. But this uses the same concept of eyeliners in that when I press down on that eyeliner tip, I'm able to produce thick lines. When I really just simply use the tip of the brush, I'm able to obtain thin lines. All right. So the very first and most important concept in learning brush pen calligraphy is that all downstrokes are thick and all upstrokes are thin. Okay. Now, one way to remember this is downstrokes are like big elephant legs. Okay, pom, pom, pom. Downstrokes of an elephant legs are very, very thick. Okay. On the contrary, upstrokes are like feather lights. Okay. When it's light, we go up. It's thin. Right? So downstrokes are thick and upstrokes are thin. All right. That's the one and only most important concept in learning brush pen calligraphy and in any calligraphy for that matter. Water brush calligraphy, pointed nib calligraphy, the concept is the same. All downstrokes are thick and all upstrokes are thin. Now with that, if we were to do upstrokes, we will be going thin. So when we hold our brush pen at that ridge and we use only the tip of the nib to glaze from the bottom to the top, we are allowing just the tip of the nib to give our writing a thin upstrokes. Right? So let's try writing some thin upstrokes. And allow ourselves to write some thick downstrokes. Now, thick downstrokes look a little bit like this, okay? Let me show us how we do thick downstrokes first. We will press down on the nib and drag. Press down on the nib and drag. Now, you will notice that when I press down and drag, there will be this thing called the square top. The square top is exactly where I would like our downstrokes to look like. Because when I have a thick downstroke, it should not look like this, okay? Slowly thick. This one is a sad face. Slowly thick. It needs to be a square top where we press down, straight away we drag, we will be able to obtain this square top. And we work towards that. Okay? Whether it's in future you're using water brush pen, whether it's in future you're using pointed tip, we work towards a square top. Alright? Now, before I get us to do curvatures, which is in our next basic stroke, I want us to be able to notice something. Right? Notice that there is a slight slant to the writing. Right? You notice that I don't get you to write straight. I get you to tilt your papers to the right, and for left-handers, tilt our papers to the left. Because even for left-handers, when I hold my pen with the left hand, and when I angle my brush this way, I press down and drag, I'm able to get the exact same writing as I do with right-handers. There should be no difference, because when we hold the pen in this way, my angle of the pen allows us to obtain that 45-degree angle to the paper. That's why left-handers and right-handers will be able to write beautifully well. Okay? The other thing is, we notice that there is a slant to our writing, and this slant is actually a 55-degree slant with respect to the horizontal line. Okay. I mentioned that I was a math teacher previously, so yeah, I like math lah. Angles, angles, math things really just excite me. So 55 degrees lah. Okay, so if you were to use like the thing that allows you to measure angles, you will be able to find that this is 55 degrees. Right. Now, why do we write with a slant? The reason is because even though it's not compulsory, having a consistent slant allows our writing to have a very modern, contemporary feel. All right, rather than writing straight. You will notice a lot of calligraphers prefer a slight slant to their writing, and 55-degree slant is a very popular calligraphy slant for a lot of calligraphers out there, right? Okay. Now, the other basic stroke that I really love for us to try is this stroke called the underturns. All right, so underturns are written with a thick downstroke first, and before we reach the bottom of the line, we will reduce the pressure and curl it upwards and maintain the pressure all the way to the end before we lift our brush pen. Alright. Now notice two things. Okay, notice that number one, there is a square top in this. Square top. Number two, that there is a decrease in pressure of your brush pen by gently lifting the pressure of the brush pen to a thin and maintain the same pressure all the way to the tip before we release the pen. Now, we do not do this. We don't do this, okay? Very common, aspiring calligraphers will do this. Pressure down, then faster come up. Flick. This one very common, okay? Very common. If we do a flick, what's going to happen is the bottom will be too sharp. It's like a kink. And in calligraphy, there is no kinks. There is no sharpness. It is always roundedness and curvatures. Right? So there should be no sharpness, and it should not end halfway. In underturns, it should not end halfway. Why? The reason is because the exit stroke of the underturn could actually be the entrance stroke of the next letter that comes after it. That's the reason why we maintain the pressure all the way to the top of the line. Does that make sense? Okay, now I'm going to give a mini quiz. All right, so I'm a calligrapher. I'm also an educator. So make sure that my students don't fall asleep in our class. We give a mini quiz, okay? So a mini quiz is, what do you think is the letter that we will write if I were to combine two underturns? Okay, you can type in the chat. What do you think is the lowercase letter that you will write if I were to combine two underturns? Okay, W is one of the letters. There's another letter that you will be able to write if you combine two underturns. U. Okay, so I will show you both U and W, and you will be able to see it when I write it, okay? So if I were to combine a U, or rather an underturn, with another underturn, this is a letter U. Now, but you say, Serene, it looks like W, what? You are not wrong. A W actually looks like underturn in combination with an underturn and a mini loop exit. This is a W. Yeah. So why do we learn basic strokes? We learn basic strokes because basic strokes are the building blocks of lowercase letters. So we always learn calligraphy from basic strokes because basic strokes allow you to formulate lowercase letters. All right. So let's try another set of basic strokes. And these basic strokes are going to allow us to formulate more lowercase. Okay. I love this basic stroke. It is called the compound curve. So how do we do compound curve? Compound curves are written with a downstroke first, thin up curvature, maintain the strength, and then slowly press down with a thick. Now, before you write, let me bring your attention to these 2 points. All right, number 1, lower and bottom parts are always rounded. Number 2, these 3 lines are about parallel to each other, which means we don't have a stroke that looks like this, okay? Pressure down. Faster come out, faster come out, faster come out. And then faster pressure down. This one, but very common, okay? Very common. Where the bottom and top are too sharp. And why are the bottom and top too sharp? Because the second line is not parallel to the first and third. So that's that face. Alright, so we work towards rounded curvatures. Pressure down, thin up, navigate through the band, and then pressure down again. This will allow our 3 lines to be about parallel to each other. Right? Now, by the way, I have a very common question that I receive from a lot of our learners for calligraphy. Okay, they always ask me, Serene, how long do I need to take to be able to write like you? Very common, okay? I hear this very, very often. How long do I need to learn calligraphy to be able to write anything? Okay. I started learning calligraphy when my oldest son is 2 years old. Okay? And he is currently 12 because he's taking PSLE this year. So which means that I've learned calligraphy for 10 years. Okay. Now, does it mean that you need 10 years to be able to write beautifully? The answer is no. All right. I started writing already for my students after learning calligraphy for 4 months. Was my calligraphy beautiful? Nah, it was far from beautiful, okay? What I actually did was I write 1 card per student per day because I really wanted calligraphy to be something that I could use to bless others. So I wrote my student's name, 1 student per day, and then I start giving out to my students. So on 1 page, I wrote their name on, and the other page, I wrote an encouragement to them. And it was so amazing that at the end of writing the 84 cards, that year I just took over a JC2 class, 3 JC2 classes. So there were 3 JC2 classes in total. I had 84 students that year. I wrote 1 card per student per day. It took me more than 4 months to complete everyone. And there were some days that I missed because I was just too busy marking their work and stuff like that. But I realized that at the end of writing, the 84 cards, just 3 months after I started learning calligraphy, I noticed that the first card that I gave to the first student and the last card that I gave for the last student was very different. And definitely you could tell that the difference was that it got better and better. Okay, that was number 1. That was something that was evident. The other thing that I noticed, even in doing this little activity for myself, is that I noticed that because I wanted to write something encouraging for the student, a positive externality that came out of it was that I learned to see the good in others. I learned to observe the students for who they are, what they do, and be able to write something that encourages their heart. And it was something that I learned over the time while I was writing cards for them. And I love that, So now even when I'm going to be writing something for someone, I always am sure to be able to pick out something that I can encourage in the person, either in the things that he or she said, or in the things that I hear that they have done. And it is such a wonderful skill to hone. And that was not an intended outcome, but it was, by the way, a very, very good outcome. And I applied it to my kids as well. So my kids see a lot of my cards because I write for them. They are the major output of my writing. Right? Okay. So O, how do I write O? O is the hardest, most difficult basic stroke. It took me 3 weeks to actually write beautiful ovals. All right. Why? Because it is very hard to connect it seamlessly without a kink. I show you. Okay. So we write C. like we write oval by actually writing like a C first and then connecting it seamlessly. I start at this point and we call this point a 2 o'clock point because it's like a clock, right? We start at the 2 o'clock point. We'll have a thin upstroke, navigate through the band, slowly press down to a thick, come back up to a thin, and then connect seamlessly. So this is an oval. You will notice that the ticks are only on the left-hand side. The tops and bottoms are actually thins. The tops and bottoms, where we navigate through the bands, are actually thins. Now, why do I say it's hard? Because a lot of our writing may look like this or like this. Okay? So this bottom too thick, top too thick are common ovals that we will see ourselves writing because we are still trying to strengthen the muscle memory of our hand in achieving the smooth transitions in the top and the smooth transitions in the bottom. Learning calligraphy is building muscle memory, so that transition requires a slow, gradual pressure in the pressing down, and at the bottom, it requires a slow pressure release in the lifting up. So this is the hardest lowercase letter to write. Okay, it's a star, 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 all right? So it's the hardest. So please give yourself some grace and kindness, even if you don't get this oval beautifully perfect, because it took me about 3 weeks to be able to write decent ovals, all right? So that's the truth. Okay, now before I get us to write ascenders and descenders, I want to teach us a little very simple concept about ratio. Right? I'm going to write 2 letter Ds for you, okay? The first letter D is an oval in combination with an ascender with an underturn. So this is a first oval, a first letter D. I'll write you another letter D, an oval in combination with ascender and an underturn. Okay, then my question is, in this first letter D and the second letter D, which one, in your opinion, looks more proportional? You can just raise your finger. Which one looks more proportional for you? First one, yeah, exactly. The vast majority of us will actually choose one as being the one that is so much more proportional looking. And you are absolutely right. It is as if when we look at human beings, okay, some people just look naturally handsome. Some people just look naturally beautiful. And because their face follow a golden ratio. So when people go to the plastic surgery, not that I'm getting everyone to do it. No, okay. I'm just saying that when people do go to, plastic surgeons, they actually know what to work towards. They want to make their facial expressions look more proportional, and that is really the golden ratio. So in calligraphy, there's also a golden ratio. There is a golden ratio, and the golden ratio is 3:2:3. Three is to 2:3. In the ascender space, the top half is called the ascender space. The middle half is actually called the X height. And the bottom is actually called the descender space. Now, many years ago, I used to be commissioned to design wedding banners. And you know how huge wedding banners are? Because they are at the backdrop of the stage, right? So they are very, very huge. So some people will get me to write Bible verses. Some people will get me to write simple words like "we do," we have decided, things like that. And a lot of times, if we are unaware of this ratio, our letters will look very disproportionate. and it doesn't look beautiful, aesthetically nice. And sometimes you cannot quite pinpoint why these words don't look beautiful. So there's a scientific reason, all right? So there's a mathematical reason. And the mathematical reason is this ratio. If we are able to be mindful that the ascendant space and the descendant space are of a ratio 3:2:3, then it's very easy for us to work towards proportional looking letters. All right. And this takes training of the critical eye. All right. It takes training. It takes, tracing over many templates over time. Tracing over templates is like a chef learning how to cook. Okay. Anybody who wants to be a chef must learn to follow recipes first, because when we follow recipes, like I'm a budding cook, okay, I'm not a very good cook, but I like to cook because I want my kids to be able to eat healthily. So I will follow recipes. And over time, because I keep following various recipes, I know what they mean when they say saute for 5 minutes until the garlic turns brown, for example. Or, sous vide this at don't know what. So I learned the terminology, I learned the techniques, and my muscle memory allows me to be able to do some of that. So same for learning calligraphy. When we learn something new, sometimes the words can scare us, like ascender, my goodness, what on earth is that, Like ratio, this is the first time I hear, things like underturns, what is that? It is the terminology that allows us to be able to hone the skills and the new learning that allows us to embrace this beautiful writing. All right. So ascenders. How do we do ascenders? It is all upstrokes are thin and all downstrokes are thick. So we will have the thin upstrokes first. Thin upstrokes. Navigate through the band. Slowly press down to a thick. These are called ascenders. So thin upstrokes. Navigate through the band. Press down to a thick. Ascenders are parallel to the guidelines of 55-degree angle. We try to maintain that rather than ascenders that look like this. This one very common, very common. Where the transition is so sharp that it looks like a P, but it's not meant to be a P. All right, it's meant to be the upper portion of letters like D, letters like B, letters like L, letters like F. So we'll have ascenders. So they are curvatures and they encapsulate ovals. So these are ovals. In calligraphy, there's a lot of ovals involved, right? Some of you actually mentioned, Serene, I like the calligraphy that you have written in your social media. And in my social media, I tend to write ascenders with slight flourishes. So what do I mean? So I've written the letter D previously, that is a normal D, but I could also have a flourished D. Okay, a flourished D is just introducing ovals to your writing that gives it its nicer, embellished look. So these are flourishes. Now, I teach flourishes in CGC as well. There is a whole module of teaching flourishes. There are some guidelines to flourishes. Okay, one of the guidelines is that your flourishes must encapsulate ovals. That is one of the guidelines. There are 3 guidelines altogether, right? And when we encapsulate ovals in our flourishes, your flourishes will look good. As opposed to, there are some aspiring calligraphers that they try to do flourishes, but the flourishes, it looks a little bit awkward. So for example, this one. This one doesn't look nice. Why? Because this is not an oval. This is a circle. So when your flourishes have circles instead of ovals, it will look like Sanskrit writing. The Indian, the Sanskrit writing, they have a lot of like circles and like strokes. Yeah. So flourishes are always encapsulating ovals. That's one of the guidelines of flourishes. And we teach flourishes in CGC as well. You will love flourishes. It's one of our favorite modules that many of our CGC members love. They really love flourishes. They come back to it over and over again. All right. Now, descenders are actually the rotational symmetries of ascenders. So how descenders are done is all downstrokes are thick and all upstrokes are thin. So because it is a downstroke, we start with the ticks first. So tick down, come back up to a thin, have a teardrop shape encapsulating oval, maintain the strength of the thin all the way to the top. Right? So descenders are really the rotational symmetries of ascenders. And mini piece, okay? What are some lowercase letters that have descenders? You can type in the chat. Lowercase letters that have descenders. Yep. P. Anything else? G. Very good. Yep. G. Okay, let me show you a G. G is an oval with a descender. Now, because I also want to introduce flourish, this is a flourished descender. The rules of descenders are the same. Do you notice that? It has the thick downstroke, thin upstroke in the ratio 3:2:3. It is maintained in my ratio of the descender space and flourishes and encapsulates ovals. And it gives an embellished look to the whole letter that you are writing. Okay? Some of you mentioned J as well, GJP. Yep. There is also Y, which is an underturn in combination with the descender. There is also a letter Z, which is very unusual, alright? So Z is an overturn in combination with the bottom part of the descender. Now, this is I'll tell you a very funny joke. Okay, this one is oversharing. But I used to write for my kids, right? So there was one letter that I wrote to my son. So he came back with the letter, and then I put it in, their secret letter box in their room. And then he read the letter. Then he came to me, Mommy, what is this? You like going to the 300 with us? So I was like, huh? What are you talking about? So I took the letter. I was like, oh my God, this is zoo, darling, zoo, okay? So he thought that when I wrote zoo, this is that Z, okay? And then I wrote it with the, double O, right? So first letter O and second letter O. So he was like, Mommy, what is this 300? So this is letter Z. I told him this is letter Z in calligraphy style, He was like, oh, I see. So yes, this is something that I always tell my students as well, that yes, this is calligrapher's Z. It looks very unusual. It doesn't look like that usual Z, but you will see a lot of calligraphers use this calligraphy Z. It is slightly stout. It has that flourished feel, and it is a calligrapher's Z. Is there only one way to write Z? No, there are many ways to write letter Z in calligraphy style, but this is one of the very common ones that you will see. All right. Okay. Now, this really was meant to be a very quick, concise, but I believe even in the short time that we have done together, I have allowed us to be able to not just learn lowercase letters. I've gone through the concepts of how, I've gone through the techniques of how we hold our brush pen, and also shared with us about how certain lowercase letters, or rather all lowercase letters, are combinations of basic strokes. And really just by learning lowercase letters, we are able to formulate the writing of many of the lowercase letters. And the rest of these notes are meant for you to really just practice that. And this is the first word that you will love to write even as we practice calligraphy, because this word breathe is exactly what calligraphy is meant to help you to do. It is meant for you to pause. It is meant for you to breathe. It is meant for you to simply slow down. All right. So yes, and I shared earlier on in the starting of this calligraphy session, brush, pen, or clock. I had such a hard time thinking of what name to call today's session. Okay, I wanted pen and write, or I can't remember what others that I wanted, but I realized that this brush pen o'clock has a very nice name that sticks because it's a 1 hour thing, and I wanted you to use your brush pen. So brush pen o'clock was meant for you to experience brush pen for yourself, but more than that, to be able to give you a time and space to experience the writing and the joy and calm that it gives.